Welcome to a special meditation in the dark. We will be drinking some grape juice, and of course we will be discussing more mystic spiritual questions, mysteries, biblical mysteries, mysteries of spirituality together on this special Sabbath of Saturday. It's 6:50 p.m. in the EST Hawk Island, Montreal, and we will be doing a little meditation and incantation. Adrian, Hannah, Dragon, Priestess, HNH, keep money in your mouth if it's not for a blessing. Special meditating event. We're gonna put some of this grape juice because it's my favorite fruit. Is the holy, sacred, divine, mystic grape. So for the farmers, butchers, bakers, nurses, doctors, firefighters, plumbers, electricians, all those firefighters on the road, the nurses, the doctors, all those preparing, making some cheeseburgers, hamburgers in the fast food, the workers of our coming empire of the 50, the 10, and the 3 for the special mystic special mystic edition. Cheers, blessed imperial telemet, Sabbath of Telema. Sweet. Forgotten goddess, dream interpretations, or it could of course be appellated questions, more questions than answers about the mysteries of the universe, the mysteries of our being, the mysteries of nature in the context of the forgotten goddess, the irrational world, and the interpretation of dreams. I am a mystic. I am a citizen, androgynous, pansexual, aspie. I live with this neurological mental condition called Asperger's, and of course, this is a raw, unedited, unfiltered, special holy event, which is probably gonna last about 1 hour or so, and maybe we're gonna get some of that good drinking which I made, a non-alcoholic beverage after this glass of grape juice, which there wasn't much left in it, but I decided to finish it because it's time to drink it. As I am also a philosopher, an artist, an athlete, a geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist and strategist who develops strategies for the North American Collectif and NATO complex. I am also a mystic. I believe in a higher being, higher force, and higher power, if you will, and I don't have all the answers, and of course I have a lot of questions, but I am a mystic nonetheless. I do believe in, I have my own spiritual rituals and practices such as sun salutations and everyday celebrations for surviving COVID, and many of course type of more rock and roll type of spiritualities. I love that rock and roll for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, and the plumbers. Dream interpretation. So sometimes we have these dreams. I'm going to begin with dreams. They can reflect inner states of our psychic dimensions, and it can also reflect perhaps future events. In the context of spirituality, there's many layers of dream interpretation, as they sometimes reflect our past, our present, and perhaps future events, which sometimes are seen in a more muddled, more mysterious way. And of course, we can happen to transcend certain events of our life, which can manifest in our dreams, or sometimes there are hidden fears, hidden lusts, and perhaps hidden dimensions of our inner spiritual, psycho-spiritual, psychosexual, psycho-spiritual levels of attainment, where we are at that point in time where we dream the dream, and I guess the next morning or night, whether we dream it during the day or during the night, vice versa, or whenever that dream occurs, and after our awakening to and thinking about that dream. For example, I'll give you an example of a dream I had, several dreams I had, but this one concretely. Yeah, of course, a dream was pertinent to relation of water. There was different waters where I immersed, and it seemed like there was different types of, like 4 different waters, but one was clearer, and it was like kind of getting more pure, if I could use the terminology, clearer, a more exquisite, more clear as I went. There was several levels, several type of rivers, lakes. It was type of lakes and rivers, almost a mixture of lakes and rivers. So there was some, wasn't 100% clear exactly, but what was more clear was that the water was seemingly getting clearer. There was levels of clarity inside the water that I seemed to have either immersed or touched or come close to an interaction of that water. And of course, water in a dream has several levels of meaning. Of course, depending on how the water was, if it's a running water, if it's a stagnant water, or if it's a combination of both. Maybe it's perhaps meaning the old and the transcending of the water. If it's a river, it's meaning perhaps a change, an advancement, or a breaking towards boundaries. Perhaps it all depends, of course, on the context of the dream, of which I'm still meditating its meaning, the meaning of the dream. And of course, the in the context of also the irrational, the subconscious, the irrational mind, of how we explore our dynamics and as an individual, sovereign self-citizen, and in terms of our collective interactions with our fellow other citizens, or the governments, the structures, and the state of the world as it is, of course, and it has become more integrated, interconnected in the past years or so. So this being a pure spiritual mystic event, I'm gonna be open to anybody if anybody watches and comments on my YouTube channel, and I have to do a new Facebook channel because I'm logging, of course, for years and years and years, or my marches to the mountain and around Hawk Island, Montreal, Hawk Island, the island of the Hawk where I reside here, and on this big island, which is surrounded by a huge river, which you can see in many of my videos, where either I go in the city, mostly to the mountain, my second home, the mistress, the forest on the mountain, Mount Royal, or of course the mountain itself, the Doctor Mountain, where the rocks are, as I go often and to my second home, the mountain, or by the river. So these dreams which we have, they can be prophetic in the sense that there might be future events. I'm open to that level of analysis and that interpretation, that they might contain, possibility, not all, but they might be possible for a more spiritual mystic exploration of dreams. There might be also a psychological aspect, a psychosexual aspect to dreams. If you have a certain erotic dream, then that might be some desires, hidden desires, or even fears or repressions that you might have in terms of your or one's sexuality. Now, in relation to my sexuality, I've been open for years and years and years and years. I am part of the LGBTQ community. I am pansexual. Pansexual. I am androgynous pansexual. You get that 50-50, 50-50, 50-50, and that's just how we rock and roll 24/7 for the farmers, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the truckers on the road, and the firefighters, and the dock operators, and all those doing some of that good working in the fast food industries, and the grocery store clerks, and all those making that minimum wage or below $25 an hour. They probably gonna get that help to get a raise, because I have to mention, of course, that it is tough economic financial times for us. And I'm just gonna mention that it's time for the implementation of my DRT, the debt refusion theory. I'm not gonna discuss it because it's not the topic of today's video, but if you can check my past videos and future videos, I will discuss it, as I do discuss it, because it's super important to implement it for the coming of our fusion of Canada and United States into the perpetual imperial Republican Union. This massive public-private partnership which we need to implement across what I call the North American Collective. So as a Quebecer, Canadian, North American, as a world citizen as much as I can be, of course, it is interpolated that the activities of which we endeavor to be part of our daily activities and daily lives, there is a spiritual component to it. Whether we do rituals, whether engage in chanting mantras, invocations, of whether in English by that book of the law by which I rock and roll with, and ancient, of course it could be ancient languages like Latin or Hebrew, and keep in mind that part of the Hebrew Bible, the Torah, the part of the book has ancient Egyptian Egyptian names, which of course are related to the hieroglyphics, which were part ideo-pictural, representing the pictures and the idea essences behind the verbal incantation and of the reading of the hieroglyphic symbols, right? They were more symbolic, mystic, holy language. And of which you can see part of this on this cup here. Sometimes I get flashes of triggers of the ancient Egyptian language and linguistic whenever I look at hieroglyphs, but I'm not fully able to sing that hieroglyphic rock and roll yet. Today might be the beginning where I get even better at that, but nonetheless, there's a spiritual component to our modern day due to the technological advancements, the high scientific technological advancements which we are, which of course makes me think of Arthur C. Clarke's famous, one of my favorite science fiction writers, where he wrote, of course, the point that very much some science and technology, sometimes advanced science and technology, is undiscernible or indiscernible or with magic, right? It's like a little bit of that magic where you have the interaction of volition and desires and rites and rituals put together for a desired effect, whereby whatever will we intend to project or do in our societal, the individual, and of course it could be at the micro and the macro level. And keep in mind the forces of nature and whatever we might deem as, in the 5-letter word, as karma, or I guess the consequences of our actions and behaviors and doings in the world. We're gonna go back to a mystery, as this is a mystery. As of course I gotta say, and I pronounce myself, that I do also say the word goddess, G-O-D-D-S-S, the forgotten goddess, and that I will to build, as Dragon is aka also that priestess Hana of the forgotten goddess, and I got credited those trillions of kisses, trillions of kisses, trillions of kisses, trillions of kisses to build that forgotten goddess GODDSS temple here in North America. But not that the goddess needs me or us building a temple, where sometimes in that temple I envision having rooms and a space dedicated where men and women can just scream, ah, scream, ah, scream, ah, scream, ah, and go a bit on the more crazy aspect of life, and go a little bit crazy with a little bit of the irrational emotional side, to be accepted as an expression of worship and prayer in certain parts of that temple, or to have an hour or several hours a day where people know that if they go in the forgotten goddess temple, you might see men and women just screaming, ah, to represent the irrational emotional integration of the irrational and emotional part of ourselves. When sometimes we repress and we deny, or don't fully comprehend, that might make us a bit sick and ill in certain manners, of where we might, of course, do projections or self-harm, or go towards a depression and suicidal and even homicidal rages, right? So the point is that, and I've been depressed and suicidal long ago, and crossing Canada coast to coast, it what made me come out of my depression and me being suicidal. And that was a great event, crossing Canada, and it's gonna be 8 years in August and September. In August I went, of course, in Vancouver, BC, British Columbia, and in September I went in Halifax with an anonymous friend, and I still got those tickets. Still got the tickets. I'm auctioning them for $1 million to raise funds to pay all my $10,000 debt to the RBC. And of course, I'm auctioning almost everything that I have. I came here really with nothing from where I used to live in a moldy place years and years ago. And I thought it was 2015. But I thought it was 2016, but supposedly it was 2015. So it's been 10 years since I live here. Still a small place, but way bigger than where I used to live, where it was really a tight, moldy, underground, small place. So in other words, I don't will to go back to nothing, just advancing, as I lost a lot of weight and I've advanced in my spiritual and mystic pursuits, as I do on a daily basis. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I do say the word goddess. Whatever names we might give the forgotten goddess, she dances with her brother's son and doesn't need my piece of dust buying or building the forgotten goddess temple, although that is part of my will and volition to build the forgotten goddess GODDSS temple, So as we go towards a more understanding of the mysteries of our being, of our relation with the universe, and what is God, goddess, 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 God, goddess, I don't have all the answers. And now we're going to go towards biblical mysteries, the mysteries of the Bible. Now, I guess this should be an introduction to the series God/Goddess of Israel, because it's a major figure of the Bible, and even if in today's word we hear the word Israel, right? Israel. And of course, Israel is also in relation to the twin, because Israel had a twin named Esau, Edom, right? There were twins born in the biblical stories. And keep in mind that according to the historians and chronology, if it was a real mythological figure, the twins, that is Israel and Esau, just like the twins of Romulus and Remus of Rome, which were either mythological or real existing people and human beings, or just like Lycurgus maybe was a bit semi-mythological, or part divine, part semi-mythological, part divine, semi-mythological, semi-being, all those appellations which we can of course impart in different aspects of our being, of relations to the biblical mysteries. But a mystic, if you read of course the Bible in a more literal meaning, it has more mystic, deeper occult meaning, right? And sometimes some answers and some writings totally are going to perplex our whole understanding of what we know of the Bible. And I'm going to, of course, go into a major point to discuss this mystery of the Bible. And you can let me know what you think. This mystery of mysteries of mysteries of mysteries. From what we know and what we think we know. Because sometimes the answer is right in front of our face. Now in Genesis chapter 50, it's mentioned that Israel was embalmed. And it's mentioned that the ancient Egyptians, because Israel lived supposedly circa 3,500 years ago, 1580 BC circa. So 1,500 years before Rabbi Jesus. But this point there that's marked in the Torah, in the Bible, that he was embalmed. Now this begs a question, because the ancient Egyptians of that time would have only accorded these special rites to a select few. And not only that, but it was a spiritual, mystic, religious event. Because it's furthermore mentioned that the Egyptians mourned for Israel, Jacob, who became Israel by the fight, after that fight, which we're going to get back into. But of course it's mentioned that he was embalmed, and they took the 40-day embalming rite, 40 days, it's mentioned there, and then the 70 days of mourning. And these numbers come again, right? The 40 and the 70 souls with which Jacob went into Egypt, as it's mentioned in the Bible, the 70 souls, and the mourning of 70 days, the mourning. But why would the Egyptians mourn for a stranger? And that's where the mystery lies. that it could not been a stranger. In that sense, if they would have embalmed, because the embalmment procedure was a mystic, religious, spiritual component. Just like several religions nowadays, when somebody dies, there's a certain mourning, or my will is of course to be celebrated, my death to be party and celebration. And from Montreal you can go get the elderberry and make elderberry juice and get drunk on it and dance and make a good loving. I want thelemic rights, the rights of Thelema, the rights of Thelema, what Aleister Crowley Partenariat called greater feast. That's what I will for my death. Death. I want to be remembered according to the rights of Thelema, to be celebrated. My death to be celebrated according to the rights of Thelema. I'm a non-sectarian wannabe Thelemite, a mystic, wannabe. I guess if you get into the mysteries, and I knock at the door, but I guess I've been knocking since I can remember, because I got rah from retrograde amnesia, since I have trouble remembering my life prior to 2014, spring 2014, about circa spring 2014, just about a few months before moving. Supposedly I moved here in 2015, July, so it is July now, so it's been 10 years this month. I thought it was 2016, but supposedly it's 2015 that I moved here, and did lots of studies, lost weight, been depressed, been suicidal, and here I am, doing this video on YouTube about mysteries of the Bible, mysteries. So the fact that Israel was accorded the embalmment and the embalming procedures, which were performed as several invocations and rituals, because it was a long ritualistic process of 40 days, the whole embalmment. And there were specialists and type of castes and scribes, and of course there had to be the invocations of the ancient Egyptian deities. So if Israel would have not been of the same religion as the ancient Egyptian, as the Pharaoh and as the physician, they would have not performed the ritual embalmment. I'm just gonna go get a little bit of wine and come back. 44 seconds passed since I went to grab. I changed my mind. I didn't get wine, but I got this elderberry juice. This I made. So I made this from elderberry found on the island of Montreal, Hawk Island, Montreal. Elderberry juice. Elderberry, Elderry, elderberry, Elderberry. Correction. Elder, Elderberry. Elderberry juice right here. It was in the fridge, so it's got a bit of ice, but it came out so good. So I'm just gonna and then shake it off a bit. So I made this. It came out so good. I made 4 bottles. Next year I'm gonna try to make 44. Because there was so much, nobody was picking it. A lot of people don't know. It smells so good also. I put a bit of sugar, but it's so good. So this is made by Adrian on a Dragon. I made it in June. I started in June, so summer 2025. Elderberry juice. I still got 2 bottles. I'm auctioning a bottle until you have time if I don't drink it for $1 million, to give half to my anonymous friend. $1 million for a bottle. I made it, so let's see. So good. So good. Elderberry juice. Elderberry juice is so good. Actually, it came out better than I was expecting. So back to the statement that I made, that discovery, the mystic discovery, knowing a little bit, being a wannabe biblical scholar, a wannabe mystic, a wannabe initiate, a wannabe spiritual teaching student, and I don't have all the answers. I practice my spirituality, sun salutations, and sunset, sunrise, midnight, and according to the book of the law as much as I can, as much as I can. But the mystery of the Bible remains. If you read Genesis chapter 50, it's right there in the Torah, in the Bible. Jacob, who became Israel, Israel, the father of the 12, I guess, the 13 tribes, the tribes of Israel, was embalmed in ancient Egypt, and the Egyptians, it stated that they mourned for him according to the special rites. But the mourning, the way some deceased does in whatever religion, XYZ, there's so many religions in the world that honor the dead differently. But Israel in the Bible, it was honored by the ancient Egyptians, so it must have been according to the ancient Egyptian religion. So the goddess of Israel then was the same goddess as the goddess of the Pharaoh. It had to be, because otherwise they would have not embalmed. They would have not performed the rites. You understand? So it's marked in the Torah, in the scribes, whatever the scribes, how it was passed down, and right. So that's a mystery. And then we go to another mystery, King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech. It says in 1 Kings 3, right, that Shlomo married who? Pharaoh's daughter. Right in the same paragraph as he mentioned that he finished building the building and the temple. So this is interconnected. So in other words, he would have not finished building the house nor the temple if he would have not married Pharaoh's daughter. And Pharaoh's daughter, they would have not married a foreigner, a stranger who was not of the same ancient Egyptian religion. They had to be. Otherwise it wouldn't have accorded, because they were mostly intermarriages, right? And furthermore, of course, we have the mysteries. To go back to the mysteries of the name of Jacob before he became Israel, that of course he was inquiring about the names of God. The names of God. What is your name, right? Because in the essence, I guess you would have a supreme deity with hidden names and many names, and starting with Hebrew letters and maybe embodied in the hieroglyphs or seen in the stars or seen in this scientific smartphone which I'm now making the video with, and perhaps seeing the divine in somebody else, or even in this elderberry, and even in whatever the case may be. And what? I will in August. I will need some. Yeah, how much? It's my anonymous friend. Hold on. I'll be back. I'll launch this up. So back to the mysteries as we go, because I had to attend some business. So rock and roll 24/7, and back to Israel, biblical Israel. In Genesis chapter 50, it is mentioned of his embalmment and that the Egyptians mourned for Israel, right? It is right in the Bible, Genesis chapter 50. And of course, the mysteries of the names of God and the struggles. Jacob asked, "What is your name?" This is where also he lays rocks, and he has the dream with the ladder going up and down, and angels going up and down on the ladder. Jacob's ladder, right, in the dreams. But the point is, and the fact, the truth written there in the Bible, the Torah, was in Genesis chapter 50 that Jacob, who became Israel, the holy name, he was given a new name. It's like I changed my name right here through blood, sweat, and tears. So Israel was given a new name, and the mystery of the name is also still a mystery, because what does exactly Israel mean? Israel, or how does the exact pronunciation of the name is Israel or Israel or Israel. So the goddess of the Pharaoh who allowed, who enabled, who financed, who commissioned the embalming of Israel, the physicians, and the mourning thereof, and the whole 40-day rites and rituals which were performed according to the Mystik ancient Egyptian religion, was performed for Israel, for Jacob. So that, of course, means and is the truth that Jacob, Israel, had the same spirituality, mystic initiation, divine spirituality, and mystic beliefs as the as the Pharaoh, as the ancient Egyptian. They had to be, because otherwise he would have not been embalmed. He would have been accorded other rites, not the ancient Egyptian embalmment and mourning rites of 40 days and 70 days respectively. You follow? So is this mystic point of truth that is fundamentally, in essence, the truth of that specific mystic belief. So sure, there are many, but keep in mind this was. So now it puts the whole mystic appellation of the Exodus into question, and since it's first for today's Saturday Sabbath, which the Imperial Republican Thelemic Union Sabbath lasts until tomorrow Sunday sunset, from midnight. It's 1 second past midnight. I guess it's Saturday. A second Friday starts Friday at midnight, but basically it's Saturday at midnight, right? Because that's when the Friday becomes Saturday. So and ends tomorrow Sunday, because today's Saturday and Sunday is sunset. So the point is that as today is important on this 26th of July, Saturday 26th of July, that in the Bible is mentioned in the journeys of the Israelites, the children of Israel, that they had 42 journeys. And that's another mystery related to the spirituality, the mystic beliefs, occult initiatory beliefs, mystic beliefs of the ancient Egyptian again. Because who were the ancient Israelites? And how come they were accorded Goshen? And what's the mystical, symbolic relationship of 400 years? Because that's the approximate time duration of a pharaonic dynasty, of a dynasty. And that is the dynastic, mystic, mysterious, mystic mystery of Israel, the God/goddess of Israel, goddess of Israel. Because the number is 42, the journeys are relationships to the goddess who had to oversee scales of justice, if you will, truth and balance and justice in the in the whole kingdom, in the whole domain, in the whole area. And so, of course, the other transpired mystery, the occult mystery, if you will, is that the sister of Moses was called a prophetess. The appellation prophetess is given. Prophetess. Right? Prophetess is given. And of course, the mystery is, of course, that the pyramids remain today. The pyramids remain. The pyramids today. So the Giza pyramid complex, where I will to be, one third of me in the pyramids near Cairo, Sindh, and one third with Papa Crowley up in Hampton, New Jersey, and one third of me up in Montreal, Hawk Island, Montreal, HAWK, Island of the Hawk, Montreal, Sindh. Atop, at the back of the Belvedere, Konjanak. One third of me in Hampton, New Jersey, and one third of me in the city of the pyramids, which are temples and tombs, basically. They're temples and tombs. So back to the mystery of the embalmment of of Israel. That's one of the mystic mysteries which one has to meditate upon and do some learning, do some education, but nonetheless, that is the truth. And the understanding is that according to an individual human being, the 40-day embalmment rites, still at that point in time, was reserved for an ancient Egyptian higher elite. It became more accessible as the dynasties changed from the building of the pyramids, which occurred circa 4,600 years ago. So even if we pinpoint chronologically Jacob, aka Israel, 3,560 or 80 years ago, that means that about 1,100 years before Jacob, Israel, the pyramids were built. 1,100 years before the pyramids were built, 1,100 before. So that is the common understanding, to fully understand and integrate the whole situational relation and the mysteries of the biblical texts, the Torah, the Bible. So that embalmment, of course, was a mystic, occult part of the ancient Egyptian religion, who the person who was accorded those 40 days, and in the embalmment procedure, the mystic and practical and physical embalmment procedures would lasted 40 days, plus the 70 days of the mourning. Those were accorded to the ancient Egyptians. They had to be of the same spiritual, occult, mystic, religious beliefs, to share the occult, spiritual, mystic, religious beliefs as the pharaohs, as the ancient Egyptians, as the physician, as the ancient Egyptians did with the mystic ancient Egyptian religion. They had to be. Otherwise, they would have not embalmed them. Otherwise, those citizens would have had their different religious, spiritual beliefs and rites, but not that specific embalmment as is mentioned in Genesis chapter 50. So that means that the god-goddess of Jacob, Israel, was the same god-goddess as pharaohs, as ancient Egyptians. And only 400 years later, after Jacob and the Israelites were recorded Goshen, of course that was a highly reputable land in ancient Egypt, right? It's close to the pyramids and goes by the upwards of the Nile, very fertile, very luscious, very agricultural rich, very centered. And of course, 400 years later, with a new pharaoh arose. That is, of course, approximate duration, more or less, of a dynasty, of ancient Egyptian dynasties. And of course, this point is the reference for a more mystic understanding of how come we have the Israelites journeying 42 journeys, 42 journeys, 42 journeys, 42 journeys. Because the number 42 is related to certain laws, according to transgressions, to the ancient Egyptian, if you want to call it spiritual force, or goddess, if you want, goddess, of many names, of which one was Maat. That feather of Maat oversees the innocence or guilt of an individual in relation to his behavior, his actions towards another human beings, or the environment, or cattle, or etc., 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 etc. So then, from the involvement of Israel, Jacob, 400 years later, just there according the number of a changing of a dynasty, to the new establishment based on the same old traditions of the 42 journeys and the law of truth and order, which had to be consequentially established, to a new development and a new development. And of course, consequently, by prudence, the return, of course, to a few hundred years forward, to Solomon, King Solomon, Shlomo, married. It's when it's mentioned his marriage to the Pharaoh's daughter, the daughter of the Pharaoh. Consequently, in the same paragraph, it's mentioned him finishing building the house where they lived and the temple to God. So that means, in other words, that he was. You can get the Yud Chei Vav Chei, Elohim, whatever, Torah, the prophetess, and all the ancient Egyptian beliefs, and of course all the mysteries thereof, and pertinent, of course, also to, before going back again, to the reconciliation of Jacob and Esau, the twins, the Jacob and Esau, reconciliation after many years, the reconciliation of several dynamic forces into one entity, if you will, or one human being, perhaps embodied in Joseph, so that fusion thereof, the executive fusion by the merging of the Jacob Israel's powers and forces and spiritual energies, and his twins, Esau, Edom, also known as Edom, fused, merged in the Pharaoh's blessing towards Joseph. And of course, we are called, of course, to, as human beings and most of religions, to keep a moral, ethical code of conduct and ethics. And of course, I written documents and philosophies as a philosopher mystic in relations to us, as not being perfect myself. I am, for years and years, I've been out in the open. I am androgynous, pansexual. I'm a man, I'm a woman, due to my previous reincarnations and past lives. Sometimes I was born a priestess from ancient Egypt, to a farmer of ancient Egypt, ancient Rome. Here as a Quebecois, I lived between 1688 and 1735, and born in the United States 3 times, post 1776, once as a woman, twice as a man, served both in 2 different wars in the same United States Army. You just gotta read George Patton, Through a Glass Darkly. So, as of course many mystic spiritual traditions, as mine does, Telema and Kabbalah and others, that mystery of reincarnations, of which I believe in. So it's set a new world order, spiritual, political, technological, together from Montreal, Hawk Island. Pledge allegiance.